One of the most disturbing elements of the Prohibition War is how it's made police the enemy of otherwise law-abiding cannabis consumers. Fortunately, one group of police officers knows the futility of prohibition and reaches out to educate the community and current law enforcement. Today, the Russ Belville Show visits with another speaker from Law Enforcement Against Prohibition with one clear message. Cops say legalize drugs.
Welcome back, everybody. 30 after the hour, and joining us by telephone once again on the show, we welcome back Larry Talley, retired from the US Navy. Welcome back, Larry.
Thank you very much. It's great to be back, Russ. I appreciate it. Happy Halloween. That's an awesome costume.
Thank you. Happy Halloween to you. And remind folks what it is you did when you were in the Navy.
Well, I worked for Naval Intelligence. I traveled the world. I did all kinds of different stuff for Navy intelligence, but it applies to what it is that we're talking about. It just so happens that from the day I enlisted until my career ended, in some point in fashion, my foot was always in the war on drugs. We're talking about someone that was an enlisted person in the United States military, paid for by the United States tax dollars to defend their country, but a great part of my job was spent in the war on drugs, just like many other soldiers and sailors that are out there today. That's what I did.
Now, with working in the Navy, I imagine there's a lot of interdiction that is done and a lot of international work. Did your intelligence work lead you that way, too?
Absolutely, yeah. We did a lot of interdiction work. I lived for a lot of part of my, for a good chunk of my career in Panama, the Republic of Panama. And that was a forward operating post for us, the United States Army, very southern riverine components of the military. And what we did was what was our South American drug interdiction operations. And so this kind of takes place a little bit farther back in time when Scarface was a popular movie. And Scarface depicted this period of time in which there was a lot of lawlessness involved with the narco trafficking from Colombia, Bolivia, Brazil, on up through Panama and on up through into the United States. This is before Mexico really had the foot in their game. Mm-hmm. Had a foot. And General Barry McCaffrey who later became the drug czar, he was the commander in charge down there. So he was the guy in charge. So this is the kind of period of time that trying to paint a picture of what it was like down there back in that period of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one of the things that I've been reading a lot lately, in fact, I was just reading a piece today where they're trying to defend this war on drugs, and part of what they've said was that, wow, we've really reduced the amount of cocaine that people are using in Colombia. They've reduced 60% of the coca crops down there, but they kind of gloss over the fact that all that seems to do is move it to Bolivia and Ecuador.
Well, what we did was we interdicted in between the Cali and the Medellin cartels down there in South America. And when that occurred, all the drug trafficking then funneled to different places. Now, what was very interesting about this, the Cali and the Medellin cartels, Medellin, Colombia, these places, they were the cartels that were in charge of what was mostly coming into the United States at that point in time. There was always a concern from the State Department that should we break these cartels apart, that we would lose the ability to observe the drugs coming into the United States, which mm-hmm. is an interesting notion because that seems to intimate that people in the State Department knew that if we did take out these cartels, that there would be a splinter that would occur, and we would lose the ability to at least watch and count the amount of drugs coming in the United States. So when we did take those out, that's exactly what did occur. Yeah. There was a splinter groups that grabbed a hold of all of this drug trade. It created a vacuum, just exactly the same way as it does on the street corner. Look, we all know how that works, right? The guy on the street corner pulls his, the drugs out of his pocket and offers them for sale, and when they get handcuffed and taken away, there's another guy that pops right back in his place. There's no difference. Anytime you take out a cartel, as long as the problem exists, the problem is prohibition. So it's just indicative of human nature. It doesn't matter if it's here, South America, China, or Afghanistan. So that's what occurred, and so these splinter groups had picked it up. And then we have this story, this progression of what occurred ever since then. It did splinter to different parts of the jungle, and it even went as far as Fuerzas Armadas Revolutionary Armed Forces, which was originally a group out of Colombia, they turned into a narco group, and they spread throughout the region. Yeah, it was just narco trafficking. Wherever the narco guys were, that's where there was going to be trafficking. And so then that's kind of what brought us up into what is become today. That the war just keeps coming farther up north. Now today, we have cartel leaders that are basing their operations here in the United States, here in Texas, in Chicago. It's going to get worse. The war is going to continue to escalate until we can change our policy. And that's, at least now, I believe that we're beginning to see the dam break.
Yeah, it seems like people are starting to get it as far as the drug war goes, because no poll has surprised me more than the recent poll, public policy polling, came out from your home state of Texas there, saying 58% of Texans want to legalize marijuana. What did you think about that, and what do we do next?
Yeah, see, this really is surprising, and I agree with you. You've done some great briefs on Texas. I've seen them. I've been astonished. It's opened my eyes to different parts of Texas. And to explain Texas, first of all, it's not a small state. We all know Texas is a big state. Like Texas or dislike Texas, it's a big place. There's a lot of people. But what's really interesting about it is that the liberal hotspots, and I hate to really use the term liberal. Really, I want to say the educated people that understand that some of these big social issues like the war on drugs and some of these other ones that kind of fall in sync right behind that one and right in front of that one, those folks that are real liberal on those particular topics are mostly in Dallas, Fort Worth, El Paso, Houston, Austin, outside of those big metroplex areas. And that's not to say even Lubbock is growing, and even Amarillo has a smaller group of it. Outside of that, it's a very, very conservative state. I mean, our two state senators are some of the most conservative, staunch conservative Tea Party toters in our House. So it's so for Texas to come out at 58% is really pretty surprising. So that I hope that kind of paints a picture of how surprised we really are. We knew that Texans were for medical marijuana. A couple of years ago, the University of North Texas threw together a really nice poll, and they came up with some very interesting stats in that about 78% of Texans were for medical marijuana. About 40% were for legalizing. So, I mean, there's a big disparity there. Mm-hmm. But about that 78% of Texans that were for medical marijuana, 80% of that category didn't believe that their neighbor felt the same way. So, in other words, we had a big chunk, 3/4 of Texans were for medical marijuana, but, more than 3/4 of that group were closeted cannabis, believers. Mm-hmm. I want to say consumers or tokers because these are people that are just, they believe in medical marijuana. So that means that they're not going to be outspoken. These aren't the people that are going to be in our favor, that are going to go to the polls, that are going to go talk to our representatives. So again, yes, to answer your question in a very long-winded way, I'm very surprised. Thank you.
Well, the other surprising thing in that poll was 58% support for legalization, 61% support for decrim. That's only a 3-point gap. Usually there's a much greater gap between legalization and decrim, and I think that bodes well for moving forward in Texas with some sort of legalization measure, don't you?
I think so, too. I think Texas is becoming ready. I believe that the legislators are becoming more educated on the matter. With the national trends, and following in these national trends are some very predominant national figures that are starting to shake their heads and change their minds too. And I believe as that watershed begins to change, as that watershed begins to fall, that these minds are going to change. We've seen that people can pivot pretty quickly on some topics when exposed to the right elements. And we're finally, with the education of cannabis topics at NORML and MPP and all these different groups have been coming together on and educating the country. And I can't discount Sanjay Gupta coming out and recanting some of his previous statements and saying, hey, I've become educated on this topic, and look, it's helping kids. And we're seeing now, a new FDA study for a new product it's a whole plant extract to help treat epilepsy and perhaps some other issues in children is just beginning to start. I believe in the next couple of months, there's going to be 50 kids that are going to be receiving marijuana extract that's been authorized by the FDA. That's something I think it's pretty monumental. Something that's kind of happening from the pharmaceutical edge, from the from the outside of it. Kind of follows the American mantra, let's legalize it. Absolutely. Yeah. Let's not get in our box canyon that, gosh, these kids let's do what we can for them today. And I think that's a great approach. And as we see these successes, Texas is going to be right on tribe with the rest of the country.
We sure hope so, and with Great Leap speakers like you down there working in Dallas-Fort Worth and work with DFW NORML, one of the best chapters in the country, things are going to happen faster than anybody would ever have imagined. Just even 10 years ago, you couldn't imagine the reforms that we've gotten today. Larry, we got to wrap things up, but if you've got some contact information or websites you'd like to get out to the people, this would be the time to do it.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. We'd like to give a shout-out to Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. This is a premier organization made up of wonderful people, like-minded people who want to legalize drugs. We'd love to hear from you. Please reach out to me, Larry at leap.cc. That's Larry at leap.cc. And DFW, which is Dallas-Fort Worth chapter of NORML, National Organization for the Reformation of our Marijuana Laws. This is a very great grassroots organization that's building up really quick. Come visit them at dfwnormal.org. That's dfwnorml.org. These guys are flaming. They're really helping to change some minds here in Texas. And if you're from Texas, go to Texas NORML. Come visit us at DFW NORML. We'd love to hear from you because we want you to go educate your representatives. We got a job for you. And I know that you guys want to do a job to help get marijuana legalized. Come visit us, and let's get to work together. Thank you very much, Russ, for all you do. Bless you on this wonderful Halloween. Gosh, that's a scary costume.
Well, thank you so much. I am the Pinhead Pothead this year, and we appreciate all you're doing with LEAP as well. Also, Larry, I've got an assignment to write a piece for Veterans Day about veterans and medical cannabis. Get back in touch with me after the show. We'll talk about that, okay?
Awesome. Will do. Thank you, Russ.
All right. When we come back, we got a report on Vermont from one of our listeners, so stay tuned.
We'll be right back after these messages from our 420 friendly